Welcome, everybody. It's Mile High Sports Today, live from Radio Row. They call it
Hi,
the
Mom.
Media
Hi,
Row,
Mom, I'm
Media
here.
Center. I don't know. We're still calling it Radio Row.
We call it Radio Row.
We've been to a few of these Super Bowls here and there, and so
it's my third one here in New Orleans. By the way,
I was about to say
this is
my
third
in New Orleans.
This is my third in New Orleans, and my first ever Super Bowl was actually the first time I ever did Radio Row was here in 2002.
Well, your odds are good because this is the 11th Super Bowl in New Orleans, tied for the most in history, obviously. And they know what they're doing here for sure. We are live out here at Radio Row, waiting for the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Take two.
Yeah.
By the way, we were looking at the fourth matchup in which the quarterbacks have gone against each other again in a rematch.
Yep.
And if you're an Eagles fan, you're going to have to swim upstream when you're talking about history because actually the team that won the first one won the second one every
exactly.
time. So,
and we are here courtesy of our friends at Hooters.
Yes.
They are sponsoring all of our coverage that we're doing this week. We want to thank Lauren, Eric, the entire crew, all the ladies at Hooters. And if you're looking for a place to watch the game on Sunday, go watch it with America's favorite cheerleaders. Those are the Hooters girls. They've got you covered. They've got all the big screens. They got the televisions everywhere. And, of course, those really good wings, cold beer. And remember, if you're looking for make it easy on Sunday,
right.
I guess would be the best way to put it, because you can just go to Hooters and chill. You don't got to spend the time in the kitchen.
Nope.
You don't got to worry about any of those things.
Anything up.
So go see our friends at Hooters. In addition to the great wings, I was telling you about the cold beer. You can grab a Bud Light for $3.11 or a Modelo Especial for $4.15 while you root against the Chiefs. Or maybe you're rooting for the Chiefs. Whatever it is. Hooters is your big game headquarters.
We also have a couple deals we'll tell you a little bit more about as the program goes along as well, that they'll be doing at Hooters. Some terrific opportunities there. If you, just in case, you're not going, you still can enjoy.
So coming up on today's program, we have a great chat with Solomon Wilcots.
That's right.
You and Aniello had a chance to sit down and talk to
Aniello
him.
With the SCO Show to talk to one of our forever buffs.
Yes, get a chance to talk some buffs with Solomon. One of my favorite media personalities, just because I always enjoy the conversation with him, and that is Mike Golic. Mike Golic Sr. now, we have to say, because you got to be able to differentiate since his son is also doing media.
That's right.
Now. And then you just had a chance to talk to Thomas Dimitroff.
Yeah, Thomas Dimitroff, former NFL GM with the Falcons, and now with Sumer Sports, putting together a lot of really fascinating things in the way rosters are constructed, not only in the pros but in college, approaching the ways so teams can approach NIL and portal. A really interesting discussion for people who really want to understand how the GM situation works in the NFL, and he's always great to talk to. So easy to talk to.
Yeah, he's good dude, very well spoken, very smart guy.
Yeah, some really good insights on the Broncos and their improvement as well.
And so, we're not trying to, pull the wool over your eyes. We tape these interviews at various times throughout the day, and then we pack them all together. Actually, we don't. Danny does. And we put the whole thing together so that you guys get a chance. So obviously, you can check out the interviews individually. You can watch the entire program. You can download the podcast, whatever it is you want to do. But we got some great conversations that we get to have, and I know the one that you had with Solomon was a lot of fun, and obviously, and it's actually stay tuned for that. The story he tells about the first time that he met Deion is hilarious. You're going to love the story of him talking about the first time that he finally met Deion Sanders face to face. It's a really, really fun story that he's got. But obviously we're here because of the game this weekend. I saw a stat, Shawn. They are saying it could be approximately $1.4 billion with a B dollars to be bet on the game Sunday.
Well, it's at the Caesar Superdome, of course.
We're staying at Caesars.
We happen to be staying at Caesars, and
not the Superdome, by the way. They don't let us. They don't let us sleep there. We're at the actual hotel casino.
But the first time that actually a betting sponsor is kind of at the forefront of this.
Yes.
And that's kind of fascinating for the NFL in a world where this continues to explode. And then we had the little the controversy in Major League Baseball where an umpire had been basically getting a friend to do his betting for him. He's been fired. There's always some concerns about it and around the Super Bowl, but I still look at it. It feels like we're still having this discussion years later about the betting world,
right?
That it's somehow still controversial. Like, folks, I don't know how to break this to you. People bet on the Super Bowl all the time. Like we talk about NIL in college, right? if you really think players never got anything to play college football before NIL, I don't know what to tell you, because obviously they did. The idea is now you just take it from under the table and put it on the table.
Yeah.
Sports betting is the exact same thing.
It is. We have this discussion every year, and especially here. We wind up talking about this when we're sitting in Radio Row and we're surrounded by, I mean, the DraftKings network is like, I mean, you guys obviously can't see it. It's right over there.
Yeah.
Right? Like FanDuel's got a setup
Sure.
right over there.
On that side, right there.
Now, so does Bounty Paper Towels. So, I mean, I'm staring at a Toyota right here.
Toyota, Pittsburgh,
I mean,
for some reason.
If
it's a scene.
If they can attach a logo, the NFL will do it.
Yeah.
And so what used to just be Radio Row, and it was just people walking around doing interviews and, you know, pimping whatever product they were being paid to be here for, has now turned into like it's a circus. It's and it's a sponsored circus at that. So
even more.
And I think that you make a good point about the differences that we're seeing with the sports betting conversation. But it is a conversation we wind up having constantly, and people talking about, you know, corruption and all, like it just went to Shawn's point. It went from under the table to on the table. Nothing's changed.
No, except
people have been gambling
you
like
get
this
some
for crazy
tax
for
revenue and other
amounts of
things. Yeah, exactly. So in the end, it's quite frankly, I think it's a better thing because it is happening, and you just bring it into the light. But it will be 1.4 billion.
That's what there was an ESPN story that they're saying that could be the number.
Consider that the NFL itself is a $15 billion a year organization. Yeah. I mean, think of that, 10%. Betting alone on the Super Bowl, obviously, and it'll be even busier here as the week goes along. The people watching is always spectacular at Super Bowl, and it gets even more so because the week goes along. Like you said, people kind of pimping their things. Right now, it's media, right? It's radio stations setting up. It's folks like us. It's the FanDuels and the DraftKings and the SiriusXM. Pat McAfee's behind us over there with his set. Those things are all here. In a few days, it gets weird because then, you know, like kids with YouTube influencing shows and things like that start walking around, and it's a fascinating place to be for sure. Yeah, it's
some pretty amazing people watching. You also see, I mean, you know, former Bronco wide receiver Brandon Marshall walked by a second ago. I mean, you know, it's just like you see really random things and very random people.
Yeah, right. In fact, sitting right in front of us is Kurt Schilling as we speak right now. We're not going to turn the camera, but he's right there.
Yeah, we just kind of like it's an odd week. It just always is.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I mentioned how many times I've done this, and it just reminds me how old I am. Really, is you know what gets to me about being here. I'm just reminded.
15 for you or something crazy?
No, I think it's almost 20. Wow. I'd have to go count. I think it's 19 or 20.
Wow. Here I am like a chump with 8.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm not like, it's not a contest or anything.
That's good.
But I have been, but I have been doing this quite a bit.
Yeah, but it's
a lot of fun.
It's fun to be out here, and
I refer to it as my class reunion every year because, you know, these are media people that I've known for a long time, or that I've been
very much like that.
And it's people that I consider friends and colleagues, but I only see them in person once a year, and it's here.
Yeah, you may see during some of the interviews over the course of the week that we might be waving to someone, and we probably are. I mean, that's someone that walked by that we know that waved.
It'll happen, and it's, you know, it's Denver media people. It's also media people from around. I mean, we were talking to Mark Kisla a minute ago. You know, so you do see a lot of that. So we hope to bring a lot of that kind of content to you. We will talk about the game. We will talk about what else is going on in sports. We can talk about, you know, the Myles Garrett trade request. We can talk about Cooper Kupp. We can talk about you know, Doncic. I mean, we will bring you, I think, some good content here from Radio Row. We're looking forward to it, but we also will make sure that we're keeping an eye on everything else that is taking place, like Peyton Watson, for example.
For the Nuggets, a thin bench gets even thinner.
That was really painful.
Trade deadline obviously is this week. We'll see. The one thing about that, if you're the Nuggets, though, Nate, as we go to that for a moment, is that I think I understand that fans really want to make a push for a championship right now with Nikola Jokic in his prime, and I understand why you should. At the same time, I'm not really sure they can, And I think maybe the biggest mistake the Nuggets could make is to overreact to the injury and decide now we have to make a big trade and shake things up. Watson expected to miss about a month.
Right.
And I understand that's impactful. But at the same time, you can overreact close to the trade deadline, and you can make a bad situation worse.
Of course you can. I think that's very I think there's a lot of teams that make that mistake.
Yeah.
That they step back, like you're going to be talking to you talked to Dimitroff a little bit. Like if there's breathe, right? Like take a minute and not have this instant sort of knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, and that gets tempting when the trade deadline's close because you kind of feel that clock card ticking on you, and so you feel like you're compelled to make some move.
And I think it
doesn't always work out.
Well, and that clock, I believe, for some folks in front offices, is ticking louder when you see things happening around you. When you see De'Aaron Fox go to the Spurs, when you see the Doncic Anthony Davis swap, when and I think the same thing can be said about hockey, right? As trades have been happening there, not the least of which was Rantanen. But if you let that clock sort of take over in your head, you're right. You could wind up doing something that sets you backwards. Right. There's not an excuse to do a trade for the sake of doing it. Don't get sucked into that.
Yeah, right. So I mean, it's a tough spot for the Nuggets, but injuries happen. You have to weather them. That's kind of the way it goes for the Nuggets. Unfortunately, it just seems like one of those years where not everything is working the way they need it to work. But it will be fascinating out here at Super Bowl. Obviously, I do want to hit on this. The idea, like you said, everyone root against the Chiefs, right?
Yes.
Here's the thing.
Please do.
I get it. I'm a Colorado native, okay? I get it. I get they're one of the Broncos' rivals. They're in the division.
Yes.
Why would you root for them?
Yes. Why would you?
Because they're fun.
Meh.
They're a fun team to watch.
Get out of here with that.
What are you talking about? I mean, what part of it don't you like? What part of it don't you like?
I don't like.
Mahomes is a wizard.
I'm tired of it. I'm over it. Aren't you?
You just
yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm
over it. I get it.
You're not fascinated by the idea of a team winning 3 in a row for the first time ever.
I find it fascinating, but it doesn't mean that I want to see it happen.
Yeah. See, I'm intrigued.
I would if it were the Broncos.
Well, yeah, of course.
But hey, I'm the one that picked Buffalo 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, don't listen to me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
No, I mean, I've picked the Chiefs consistently, and I'm going to continue to until they lose because they just don't seem to lose. Might be another one-score game. Like the last Super Bowl was a one-score game between the Chiefs and the Eagles, 38-35. And we know what's the Chiefs' record in one-score games. One score.
I don't want to.
Winning is a skill.
You're pissing me off now. I don't want to talk about it.
We'll see.
Thomas Dimitroff coming up.
Yeah.
Mike Golic Sr. coming up. And a great conversation with Solomon Wilcots, Buffs fans, Deion Sanders fans. Stay tuned for that one. You are going to like that a lot.
Aniello Piro of the SCO Show, by the way.
Aniello Piro from the SCO Show makes an appearance, gets a chance to have that conversation as well. We appreciate our friends at Hooters. Remember, you're looking for a spot to watch the game this upcoming Sunday. Make it with America's favorite cheerleaders, the world famous Hooters girls. So without further ado, we take a break. We come back. We've got the interviews for you. And we'll be back at it tomorrow.
You bet.
With millions of page views every year, ColoradoPreps.com is the #1 source for the high school sports community to keep up with the latest news and scores. From football and volleyball to basketball and softball, ColoradoPreps.com provides a year-round hub for coaches, friends, and family to stay connected to their favorite schools and athletes, and keep an eye on their rivals. Covering high school sports from the peaks to the plains, you always get the latest at ColoradoPreps.com.
From, I still call it Radio Row in New Orleans. Exactly. In New Orleans, it's Mile High Sports Today. It's presented by our friends at Hooters, Colorado, reminding you that if you're looking for a spot to be able to watch the big game on Sunday, they have a one-of-a-kind, custom engraved Hooters, Colorado Solo Stove nearest Hooters. Get all the big game action with our friends at Hooters Colorado. You know the voice that you just heard a second ago if you have spent any point in your time alive as a sports fan listening to the radio, and that is Mike Golic. Mike, how are you? Welcome.
First, I love the Hooter wings. Love them.
Yes.
And are they calling it Media Row? They're not.
It's like Media Center.
No,
we can't do that.
No, we cannot. It's Radio Row.
Yeah.
Let's just not lose everything.
The three of us have been doing this long enough, Mike, that I think we are allowed grandfathered in.
As long as they never call it like Podcast Row, even though everything turns into a podcast eventually. I know.
Stop
How
it.
about it?
Stop it.
I know.
Leave it alone.
We should adapt. It's adapt or die.
Yeah,
So we have to adapt.
It is. Speaking of adapting, I want to start off here with the performance that Sean Payton did coaching the Broncos this year. Your impressions? He's not going to win, but he was, finalist for Coach of the Year, and I think rightfully so. You had a team that was at the beginning of the year, the over/under with the wise guys was 5.5 wins, and they obviously crushed that with a rookie quarterback. And I want your impressions on Bo Nix, but I want to start with Sean Payton.
Oh, listen, I mean, the quite honestly, he can develop a quarterback. What about the defense?
Yeah,
I mean, the defense led the league in sacks. I mean, they got after it. I mean, that's what really impressed me the most. Obviously, he can develop a quarterback. So the development of Bo Nix starting out rough and then improving did not surprise me. So I figured that was going, and it's only going to grow more and more. But I was most impressed with the defense. I really was.
There was a lot of patience there for Sean Payton because Vance Joseph was the coordinator last year, right? And it was part of that 70-point debacle in Miami.
Yep.
It could have been very easy to just throw him overboard. We've seen that happen to coordinators before, whether it's their fault or not, but there's fallout from those kind of losses.
Yes, without question.
The patience that Payton showed with Vance Joseph then ended up being rewarded tenfold. And a bit shocking, we talked about it back in Denver, that he wasn't considered one of the assistant coach of the year finalists.
Well, I think what Payton has learned, because he's been at this a while, and sometimes we see change too quickly. Teams will make a change at a coordinator or a head coach. Just see Tepper in Carolina, they change him over like they change underwear.
Yep.
I mean, and so I think Sean understands continuity and said, okay, we'll keep Vance. We're not going to make change, because people need to understand when you change a coach or a coordinator, you're changing a system. Unless you hire from within, you're changing a system. You're getting all new defensive assistant coaches that are changing the way they coach. So it can be a little bit of a growing period. So I think Sean understands continuity.
Yeah, I think that he definitely does, keeping the coaches and everybody together. Mike Golic is our guest, courtesy of Stello by Dexcom. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's go back to Bo Nix for a moment.
Yeah.
What did you see out of him in this rookie season that impressed you the most?
Development.
Okay.
And a lot of it is not, and I never really look at stats with a rookie quarterback, though CJ Stroud last year and Jaden Daniels this year made you kind of rethink that a little bit.
Just a touch.
But I look at their development. They're like Jaden Daniels right away, you could tell the poise in the pocket. Nothing rattled him. He hung in the pocket. He didn't have happy feet. He didn't try to escape early. Where Bo was a little erratic early. But Bo, again, you have to give Sean Payton credit. And you also, I think we're seeing a shift in the quarterback position taken, that coaches or NFL teams are now taking quarterbacks from college with experience. They're not taking the quarterback who started 13 games in college. You're starting a Bo Nix who started 62 games. Jaden Daniels started a bunch of games. Caleb Williams started a bunch of games. They have experience. So I think that helps in the learning process. Everything is just not eyes wide like a deer in headlights. So I look for improvement, and Bo Nix probably did that as well as you could imagine a rookie doing it. Starting out rough, where Jaden started out like, wow, oh my God, he's really good right out of the gate. Caleb, I was never in love with what Caleb, because I remember turnovers in college and erratic play and kind of making things up on the run, where you have to learn to do it from the pocket and then make stuff up on the run. Now, his O-line didn't help a lot, but Caleb was also instrumental in a lot of those sacks as well. I thought Bo Nix development was like a true quarterback development, from being erratic, being kind of, wow, this is overwhelming, to, okay, I'm setting my feet now. I'm kind of understanding. I think it's a great working relationship with him and Shawn.
Yeah, you talked about that patience that he showed with Vance Joseph. The same thing with Bo Nix. A third of the interceptions he threw in the year were in the first two games of the year.
Yep.
But Nix, as a rookie, that was somewhat new for Sean Payton. Payton had only started a rookie quarterback in one game in his entire career before starting Bo Nix at the beginning of the season. Went through all the tough times together. So how did Sean Payton evolve in developing a rookie quarterback for the first time in his career?
Well, I mean, obviously he had to show patience as well, right? And his system isn't an easy system. I mean, it can be pretty complex and that's why I think another reason why an experienced quarterback, a guy who played a lot and saw a lot, and Bo Nix and the teams he played for, was able to understand a lot of the concepts. But I think Shawn had to go through it as well. Understand he didn't have a ready-made quarterback, and also he has to understand this guy is tied to me, right? Russell Wilson is gone. This guy is tied to me now. So we're kind of joined at the hip, so I better show some patience.
Am I allowed to ask a painful question? How did you survive the national championship game, my friend? As a Notre Dame man, did it hurt?
My son Mike takes it a lot harder than I do. My son Mike and my son Jake were both on the team when Notre Dame lost in the 2013 title game to Alabama, where they got their butts handed to them. I've always been like, listen, you're there, right? Mm-hmm. You can't win the championship game unless you're in it. And I thought Notre Dame had a great year. Marcus Freeman is an excellent coach, an excellent recruiter. Players love him. I didn't bat an eye. I mean, certainly I was bummed for the players. Sure. But I'm like, hell of a year. Great year. And they're going to come back as talented or more talented next year.
Yeah. No, they definitely will. 1/3 of population in the United States is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And that is something that you've experienced firsthand and is part of the reason that you're here. Why don't you share it with us?
I'm 62 now, and at 42, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. My father was diagnosed in his early 40s as well. So I've been dealing with trying to keep my numbers right for years. And now Stelo through Dexcom is an incredible tool. It's the first glucose biosensor, FDA approved, that you can buy over the counter, no prescription needed. And I have it. It's a sensor on my arm, and it's an app on the phone, and it gives me my number instead of pricking my finger 100 times a day to find out what my number is. Or if you don't want to do that, you prick it just a few times and you don't get readings that you need. This is continuous 24/7 monitoring on your app. I can see how what I eat affects, how I sleep affects my numbers, how I work out affects my numbers. It's like having a health guide in the center and in the app, and it just kind of keeps me where I need to be with my blood sugar.
Well, and I think people know it. Like, we're all three of us are wearing an Apple Watch here. We all know and in fact, I can tell you from like an Apple Watch standpoint, some of the data helped my dad and his cardiologist because they noticed a couple of things.
Isn't it amazing?
And so whether it's the app that's sitting here on my wrist, or whether it's you're talking about the glucose monitor, it's become the technology is mind-blowing to me.
And I ask people my age to buy into it because it's so helpful and so easy. Like you said, on the Apple Watch, my iPhone's attached to the Apple Watch. I have a glucose spike. Boom, it's on my watch. It's on my phone. And I know, okay, all right, this caused it. This is what I need to rectify. It's instant.
That's the part that's nice about any of that technology, right? It's great to have the warnings that are when things bad happen, but what it helps you do is it helps you make sure that you don't have that many in the first place because you learn.
And you learn that's the key. You have to learn from it and say, okay, this I ate at this time or I ate this thing and it caused this reaction. How do I rectify that? And it's instantaneous with Stelo.
If you guys want to understand more about what Mike is talking about, the website is stelo.com, STELO.com. Will we see a three-peat?
I'm picking Philadelphia.
Me too.
I picked Buffalo to be Kansas City, and I was wrong there. So I think Philly's a better team, but all Kansas City does is win.
We were just talking about great coaches, and they have one of the best. One of the best we have ever seen in the National Football League. So,
right.
Mike, we are always appreciative of the time. It's always good to see you on Radio Row.
Nice.
It is always good to see you as you make the rounds. Have a great time this week, and thanks for making some time for Denver.
My pleasure, guys.
Good to see you. Back in a moment. Mile High Sports Today.
Welcome to Mile High Sports Today, live from, we're still calling it Radio Row here in New Orleans. Brought to you by our friends at Hooters. Look, get over that midweek slump with Wing Wednesday at Hooters every Wednesday. Get all-you-can-eat wings for just $16.59 at every Hooters Colorado location. You're in it right. All-you-can-eat, $16.59 on a Wednesday, boneless or traditional in any of the Hooters world-famous sauce or dry rubs. Hardest choice you're going to make is which one's next. Joining us is our friend Solomon Wilcots, of course, from Sumer Sports, one of the websites that I've been on for as soon as it started. You could tell there was really some special behind the way. They looked at advanced statistics, but bring it down to something where it's actionable. And that's got to be a really fascinating thing to work in, because we know so much about football already. But there's so much that you can do to maximize your knowledge. And in a salary cap driven league with the amount of money involved in there, every little bit matters.
It makes for smart business. It's a tool, right, to help you make very good decisions. We all know that data analytics has really, every part of our lives, right? I used to work, say, in insurance. I remember working as an underwriter. We're talking about understanding the probabilities of what may or may not happen, what those outcomes may be. And so it's really smart science, particularly when you're talking about building out a team. Think about the Cleveland Browns right now. They got to decide, do you keep or do you Garrett? Because it's about moving forward. Are you going to give him a new contract? He had 14 sacks this year, led the league in sacks last year. But this year they only won, 3 games? It was 3-14. So how much is that doing for them? They're in salary cap purgatory, $68 million under the cap. They can climb with one move, with one blockbuster deal. They could get themselves to not only even ground, they can get above that by getting players and picks for him and getting some cap relief. So if you look at it through that portal, it begins to make much more sense. If you look at it emotionally, it never is going to make any sense, because you don't want to trade a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, and another guy, potential Hall of Fame player as well, that looks like he's up for trade right now is Cooper Kupp. We saw that come down yesterday, and so obviously Sumer Sports, everything that you guys do, it takes the game and looks at it through a different lens. So it's also, kind of like the Wild West right now, right, with the NFL free agency. Here we are at Super Bowl Radio Row, all that good stuff. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this offseason plays out. Maybe the Broncos maybe try to go after Cooper Kupp here a little bit. We'll see if they do that.
That would be – he's still a good player.
He's a great player.
I think there's a couple of reasons why they're moving on. He's 1 year into that new 3-year, $80 million contract. It's going to be a $20 million. He's going to count actually $29 million against the cap. They can save $20 million if they trade him as a June 1 designee. So they're looking to get some money back. Puka Nacua is due do a new contract, and he's like their newer version of Cooper Kupp. He's bigger, he's more physical. The dude is a machine, and he's healthy. And anytime you're younger, that's sort of the tipping point, right? So the Rams are going to be okay. I think. Look, Cooper Kupp, 8 years, right, with the LA Rams. This guy was a Triple Crown winner in 2021. Led the league in receiving yards, and in touchdowns. I think he'll make a good fit with all of these West Coast coaches that coached under Shanahan and Sean McVay out there coaching. He'll find a home somewhere.
Yeah. It is funny how much there's sort of the buyer's remorse, right? So these guys in the first or second year of these contracts, and the teams decide, maybe now we need to figure out how to move on. You are a former Colorado Buffalo. Buyer's remorse is not a thing in Boulder, where Deion Sanders is coming back, obviously, but there's a lot to be excited about and a lot to be nervous about, too. There was the idea of the dalliance with the Cowboys that went nowhere, but the idea that for the first time ever, Deion Sanders will be coaching a team without his sons.
I think that's going to be interesting for him. I think it's going to be fun for him. Here's what I know about Deion. I've known him for a long time. He and I met. He was playing for the Reds. I was working in local television in Cincinnati for the local NBC affiliate. I'm covering spring training down in Florida. And I'm forced, you know how it is in local TV, you got to get a one-on-one with Deion. I'm like, I don't even know the guy. And so I'm there waiting with every single reporter in on earth, in creation. And a guy comes over and says, hey, you Solomon Wilcots? Yeah. He was like, what hotel you staying in? Here's where we're staying. Deion wants you to go into this room, be here at this time, have a camera ready, and don't be late. He showed up. He gave me a one-on-one. Didn't even know him. I didn't even know. Wow. I don't even know how it happened. He and I ended up working together, of course, at CBS Sports and later again at NFL Network. all those years, that guy was always coaching kids. He was always helping kids. He was always paying out of his pocket, not just for his own. I'm talking a whole community of kids, traveling team, paying for their travel. And he was always there helping and working with these kids. And, Travis Hunter is just one of so many that he invested in. And when I talked to Deion, when he took the job, he left Jackson State, came to Colorado, and he was catching so much grief because he was leaving.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. If all of us have worked in jobs we left, aren't we supposed to work to promotion? We earn the right and we get promoted, and people want to still hold you back. And just to help him feel better about it. And I told him, I said, and one day you're going to leave CU. I want you to know I'm going to feel the same way. Leave it better than you found it.
Right. Well,
he did that at Jackson State. And if he would have left CU, he's already left us better than he found us, man. We were the Titanic sitting on the bottom of the ocean when he found us. And he's made it so much better for everyone who lives there in Boulder. If you're a student athlete, if you're just a regular student, enrollment's up. He sold out every hotel, every single piece of merchandise. That guy is what we call a walking stimulus package.
Think about that. Colorado was the only program in the country that had every single one of their games nationally televised. The only one.
Yeah. Not Bama, not LSU.
Right, not Ohio State, not Notre Dame.
And something I know
Colorado.
also that he's proud of, for the first time in CU history, the program's over 100 years old. For the first time in CU history, the football team has an average GPA of 3.0. Now, this guy's winning at the cash register.
Yep.
He's winning in the win-loss record. He's winning in the classroom. What's the problem? I don't get all these people who want to be detractors from what the energy, because look, don't blame him for the changing landscape of college football.
Right.
Blame the people who wrecked it, because I'm telling you, they wrecked it. And he found it this way. And he says, look, I'm here. It was just kind of like the stars and planets aligned. He had kids who were coming into college sports at the very same time that college football was changing. I've covered college football. I covered college hoops. I remember Roy Williams, great coach. Mike Krzyzewski, great coach. Soon as they announced that NIL deal that it passed the Supreme Court, they were like, I'll retire. I'm out. Here's Nick Saban now. I'm out. And I don't blame them. They were used to operating under these certain rules that they had become accustomed to, right? And now it's over. And they know that it's been wrecked by the people who were called the custodians of the NCAA. They should have did a much better job of managing that, never let it come to this. Now you need smart people, and hopefully Coach Belichick, now that he's coaching in college sports, you could get some smart people in the room. I would create a commission. I'd put Nick Saban on that commission, and I would say, okay, help us codify some rules that are going to help this game become not what it once was, something new, something better than what that old system was, but something that works for everyone and something that still incentivizes kids to get a college degree. Hey, look, if you're giving me NIL money, I would think you would want to take an econ class. I think you would want to learn how to budget money, learn how to run a foundation, learn how to start your own business, right? I think you stay awake in that class, by the way, because it's your money on the line. My point is there's new ways, I think, to motivate student athletes, because the game has changed and you got to begin to think about it a lot differently.
Well, we're here, Radio Row in New Orleans. Solomon Wilcots, our guest. So I'd be remiss, obviously, with the position that you played back in college, the NFL. Let's talk a little Travis Hunter for a couple minutes if we can, because he is an absolute star. You talked about him briefly, but two ways, playing offense, playing defense. I mean, what do you think the transition is going to be like for him in the NFL?
Well, look, I think because he'll be studying two jobs at once. Like, think about this. The way the league had, by some really smart people, whether you're Paul Brown or Vince Lombardi or Tom Landry, the league, there was a time when people played two ways in the NFL. And as it became what we talk about division of labor, as it became more specialized, it became smart to ask a player to do one thing and then become very efficient at doing that one thing. You hear Belichick say, do your job. What he's saying is, I only gave you one job, man. Do that one, because it's been proven, right? Whether it's assembly line, manufacturing, you got one person just doing the one thing, man, you can be good at that one thing. Now, you ask a person to be good at two things or three things, and, you're going to see production wane. So that's the way that the NFL has evolved. I think it's evolved for a reason. There are these outliers. You know, you may not remember Roy Green. He was a wide receiver for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was also a defensive back, right? The dude was a Pro Bowler at both positions. People don't know that. The late, great Don Hudson, who we all know as this great wide receiver, he also led the league in interception. So we've seen it happen. So I'm here to say that Travis Hunter can do it. And to me, if I'm coaching him, I'm going to manage his workload because I don't want him to get injured because, you know, there are more plays in an NFL game. There are more games in an NFL season. So it's a different deal. And they hit harder and run faster in this league. However, I don't want to take the fun out of it for him. I'm going to allow him to enjoy this game, and I'm going to allow him to impact my team however he wants. Because if you ask me if he's good more at one than the other, he is great at both. Not good at both. He is great at both.
Well, managing that workload and avoiding injuries is a big part of it. And Dr. Nelson Mead is with us here today as well to talk about MACI, which is an autologous knee cartilage repair technique. And obviously, for any of us, I know I don't even know if I have cartilage left in my knees to repair. But you know, Father Time's undefeated, and eventually, a lot of the things with knees that. This is a valuable idea where you don't have to be quite as invasive and make some of these repairs, Doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what you just said right there is what MACI has really been able to accomplish. Is you said that Father Time thing, right? So before we were just putting something in there in cartilage defects to slow down, you know, the progression. Hopefully, because they're going to get worse. Hopefully, they don't get worse too quickly. And so what MACI has done previously successfully is said, all right, let's actually reverse that. We can take a biopsy of your own cartilage. We can grow it in the lab. We can come back and replant that cartilage and actually get it to mature into real new cartilage. And they've done that over and over, time and time again, for me, at least the last 8 or 9 years. And then, so how do you further improve on that? And that's when, for me personally, what I saw MACI Arthro have the opportunity to do. So what we used to have to do through a 7 to 8, inch incision through the knee, you can now do through the size of a buttonhole, right? And so what we're hoping is that we see these athletes, these younger people who have these cartilage defects, that second surgery is not as daunting. It's a little bit easier for them, and we'll still get the same success rates that we had before, but it makes it to where people are more willing to do it, makes the recovery psychologically a little bit easier, and so it's pretty profound.
So you said you've been there 8 or 9 years you've been working with this?
So I've probably been doing this procedure since I was a resident, so about 9-10 years.
So what's kind of that process been like from 8 or 9 years ago to now kind of growing to where you're at today?
So I think one of the biggest fundamental issues that MACI was able to do was to say, all right, well, how do we get real cartilage to grow, your real cartilage, and how do we get there to where we can deliver it and it's stable and it stays there, right? And it grows. Well, and so over this time, we've been able to, MACI has shown that they can do the science, right? So we've said, all right, we can make it happen. We can get results in new cartilage, all that stuff. So there was a certain amount of time that had to be devoted to that, right? So you could say that we are getting real cartilage growing. These patients are getting back to running, playing sports again, all those types of things. And now it's, all right, well, what's the next step? And so the evolution is, well, let's go towards the how do we do it route. Let's figure out ways that don't, necessitate what we call it a quote unquote approach, right? Where you can be right in there, deliver the implant, come right back out, a lot less swelling, a lot less pain, hopefully post-operatively. So those things that MACI's really, come out with, especially with the MACI Arthro.
That's remarkable. I mean, the idea of being able to do something like that, especially now, is eventually it seems like all of us will need something with the knee. So it's pretty nice to have that technology available. Thanks so much. I know you both have a busy day. Obviously, it's starting to pick up here in New Orleans, so we appreciate the time. Always good to talk to a forever buff as well about the program. A lot of fun. So thank you.
Yeah, and we also want to know if you want to know more about the MACI procedure. Go to the website maci.com, maci.com. To find out more about the procedure and find a doctor in your area.
Yeah, it's a terrific concept and wonderful. So appreciate that.
Thanks, guys.
I'm I'm going to keep this because
It's Macy.com.
it's all bone on bone for me. So who knows? But thanks so much. I appreciate it. Dr. Nelson Mead, Solomon Wilcots. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for having us, guys.
All right,
Appreciate you.
We'll be back from Radio Row next. Mile High Sports.
With millions of page views every year, ColoradoPreps.com is the #1 source for the high school sports community to keep up with the latest news and scores. From football and volleyball to basketball and softball, ColoradoPreps.com provides a year-round hub for coaches, friends, and family to stay connected to their favorite schools and athletes, and keep an eye on their rivals. Covering high school sports from the peaks to the plains, you always get the latest at ColoradoPreps.com.
Welcome back to Mile High Sports today, live from New Orleans, the site of the Super Bowl. Thanks to our friends at Hooters. Remember to gear up for the ultimate game day at Hooters with their big game package on February 9th, of course. You can win a custom engraved Hooters Colorado Solo Stove. Tailgating at home for the big game? Well, Hooters has unbeatable takeout deals like the Big Game Party Pack, or $4 off 20 wings, or $6 off of 50 wings. Get into Hooters for all of the football action. Joining us is Thomas Dimitroff of Sumer Sports, former NFL GM, perhaps maybe future NFL GM. But one of the reasons I think, Thomas, that you find yourself back in there when you worked at Sumer, and we've had a chance to talk for the last few Super Bowls. Data drives everything now. And in a salary cap driven league, in a multi-billion-dollar sport, that data and the proper application of it is really what makes teams succeed and fail when it comes to the margins. And we see so many one-score games in this league. In the end, all of that work all year long all boils down to maybe one or two of those scores, one or two of those wins, to the playoffs, or a season where you're ending too soon.
It's such a great point. I mean, we are a roster management company, so ours is much more focused on the application of how do you determine between the draft pick and the free agency pick and its value of the players. We have an arm that's working on all of what we're talking about, right? The game time decision making. It's massively important. Today's world, if you're not utilizing that data, it's almost irresponsible, right? And that's funny because some of the interviews that I took this year, however, a lot of the organizations still want, and this is semantics, they don't want it to be called data driven. They want it to be called data informed. I know it's an odd deal because I think people are still a little edgy about whether they commit fully to that system.
Yeah, and that's been an argument I've seen for a long time. The idea that somehow, let's just use the term, analytics generally, right? Analytics or scouting, or your eyeballs. And there's this sort of false argument that it's an either or thing, and it's not. I kind of try to liken it to, if you're going to hire a handyman to come over to your home and the handyman only brought a screwdriver, well, you can only do so many things, right? I mean, they're not polar opposites. There's different tools in the same toolbox. And if you're not using all of them, then you're not doing everything you could be doing to succeed.
Well, we talk about that, and you're exactly right. Utilize everything you have. It's an augmentation tool, right? It's not. It is not.
Great way of putting it.
It's not black box. No one wants us to come in there and say we're going to push a button. And I would say the same thing when I'm trying to sell the product at Consumer Sports that I'm working with. I'm like, look, I'm not going to these GMs saying, hey, all of your tens of millions of dollars you're investing in scouting, you just wipe aside and you press the Sumer Scout button,
right, and
it gives you the answer at all. We're talking about taking virtually, and one of the things someone asked me recently, what's the difference? I said, what I realize now as a general manager, as a aspiring to be again general manager, if that ever happened, I know that literally everything in football operations, the building of the team, you're talking about the athletic performance side, et cetera, you can apply data. This is about application, to your point. Mm-hmm. I have not spent 3 years at Sumer Sports learning how to code and learning how to model. What I have learned, however, is appropriate application. And I think that's where the NFL and the NCAA, because we're doing a lot of work with NIL and portal, if the organizations or the front offices are willing to understand that they can apply it properly as a nice juxtaposition and back to augmentation, man, you can go so far. If you're burying that, there's no way an owner should look at his general manager and or his president and think that they're bypassing that and they're poo-pooing data.
Right.
That's not, again, I don't think it's responsible of them. And I think that's something that owner has to look at that organization.
Yeah. And I think you see more and more of that become in the past, but there is so much data available. How do you determine, when you're talking about building rosters? How do you determine what is the correct applicable data? Because you can find anything you want. And so confirmation bias can come into effect too. So how do you find a way to apply the data correctly, isolate the things you need to make sure that you're building the best roster, whether it's in college or the pros?
And I think this is a thoughtful person in that spot, whether that's the GM or the head coach together. And when you're looking at, again, just for an example, you're looking at a list of linebackers that you're trying to differentiate between, to be able to take the data at the 30 different metrics that we have / position specifics that we have. Could be agility, it could be take on, it could be tackleability, whatever it may be, that you have a line item there that is inspired by not the subjective, but the objective, all of our algorithms. And then you're able to look at that. Let's just use agility. Agility is a 6. We put that on with our subjective eye. But the data and the algorithm saying he's a 7.5. Well, what that is you look at that, and it's up to the general manager with a sound mind to understand how much of a difference is there. Why is that gap there? Let's go back to watch video as a department, and let's analyze where are we going to end up. Is it a 6.5 or a 7.5? And in that specific metric, that's how I see this happening at this point. Eventually, there's going to be a lot more evolution in the next 10 years where then the button push becomes a little bit more legitimate, and you're able to see all the run on the data. That we're still working on.
But you do find those little bits of difference there, because that's how, especially when you talk about the draft, and I'll bring this back to Denver, where Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback selected, a first-round pick, where a lot of people argued he didn't have a first-round grade on them. Well, I think the proof is in the pudding. He was a tremendous rookie quarterback and got better consistently, but also was a better runner, was more agile than a lot of people expected coming out of college. Maybe you wouldn't have been if you're using everything. And the Denver Broncos were honed in on Nix early and realized that was the person they wanted. So that's a kind of an example of what you see there when everyone's on the same page. For the Broncos in Denver now, for the first time in a long time, you have the ownership, the general manager, the head coach, the quarterback, all aligned. That doesn't happen very often. It hasn't happened for Denver in a long time, and it's been part of the reason they've had such a long stretch of difficult seasons since winning Super Bowl 50. But now when it's all in a line like that, and you've had a chance to experience those kind of situations as a GM when it is and when it isn't, how much of a difference, how quickly can improvement be made when everybody's pulling on the same end of the rope?
I think it's so vital. I got a chance to see it in New England before I got my job as a general manager at the Falcons. And the Falcons, it was vital with both Mike Smith as a head coach and both Dan Quinn. It is so important, right? If you're not in lockstep, and you're not just the messaging, I'm talking about the idea of how you want to build teams, the idea of how you want to adjust, how you want to deal with animosity and adversity that comes your way. That is so important. I think this whole mercurial building of, like, I hear people sometimes say you need some healthy debate. I believe in healthy debate. Don't get me wrong. But when you're talking about acrimony and animosity, and people say, no, that's really good for an organization. There are some leaders out there that believe that. I completely disagree, at least in football. It ends up going in so many different directions, whether you're picking a player a certain way or whether as a GM you're saying, well, we need this guy, and then there's a disagreement between the head coach and the offensive coordinator, whoever it may be. Again, alignment is vital, and there's no way that I think you can be a championship team without legitimate alignment in all positions, not just those four. Those four are vital, of course.
Yeah, for the Broncos, obviously now the massive roster overturn over the last couple of years. So Sean Payton came in, Russell Wilson came in. Russell Wilson was then sent out, biggest dead cap hit in the history of the NFL until the Cleveland Browns get around to theirs. Yeah. But obviously for the Broncos, it was expected to be more of a challenge than it turned out to be. They took the biggest part of that cap hit this season, and yet they surprised everybody. The over-under in Vegas was 5.5 wins. The Broncos go make it the playoffs, and obviously they get run out in the first round by a very good Buffalo team. But the improvement was massive, far larger than expected, quicker than expected, and still with that massive dead cap hit, that's already past them. So when you see that kind of roster overturn, I mean, how impressive is it? I think for fans, they look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of change. But you know what that actually entails. And that's a tremendous amount of work for everybody to be able to flip Denver's roster over in the 2-year span in which Sean Payton had been there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a massive testament to Sean Payton, of course. And I'm a huge believer, I'm sure you are, and ownership, right? Active ownership, being in the right place. And you guys are calling Mr. Penner your owner, right? Or
yes.
are we? I mean,
the Walton Penner Group.
The Walton Penner Group. I just think in my interactions with him, quite honestly, I just think that is an ideal situation. I think coming back from, I mean, we all know John Elway was great at so many levels. I think after him leaving and the takeover of when George came in and such, there are some bumps in the road. Of course, Shawn comes in, straightens that out a certain way, which you would expect to happen, right? I mean, this is where I keep going back and forth on this, and I can tell you about this now. I've always thought coming back in that I would seriously consider trading for a head coach. That's how important that head coaching thing is. And we can talk about all the other things that are important. And I love George Payton personally. I think he's a really good football man. And I also know Sean Payton was a difference maker and will continue to be. And there are 3 coaches out there right now. If I were to ever get a GM job, I'd be like knocking on the door to try to think about seeing if you could trade for a person like that, because it is so vital. And if you're scraping around with some of these coaches, that's why I'm concerned about making sure that some of these coaches are paired correctly. And just because they're a offshoot of a tree doesn't mean they're anomalous like Sean Payton.
Right. And when Payton came in, of course, Sean Payton came in. George Payton was already there. Sean Payton had a great relationship with his GM, Mickey Loomis, for many, many years, talked about it, and then said that he and George Payton, after getting to know each other, he felt that there was kind of a similar vibe. Quite frankly, when Payton came in and changed so much, there was a lot of doubt of that being the case. But now it very much seems that if it was bumpy to begin with, that these guys are aligned, because you can't pull off what Denver pulled off in such a short span of time, especially with the salary cap issues, and have that kind of success. So now you're talking about a relationship that is relatively new, but clearly works and is clearly productive. If you're the Broncos and you're thinking about that, where do you go next? If you're looking at a Denver roster and you do have some money to spend, wide receiver we know about, running back we know about, tight end, of course, is a major need. There's always a need for an off-ball linebacker. Inside linebacker is a challenge. If you're Denver, where are you looking? And do you look in the draft, or do you look in free agency perhaps to fill those?
Yeah, I mean, their salary cap, the space right now is between 40 and can be between 40
Roughly.
and 50, I think.
Yeah, I mean, about a 30 million of the dead cap is remaining.
That's right. I am really on this mode right now. The draft is really, really strong on a couple positions. One happens to be tight end. And I could spend hours talking about tight end and the importance of tight end for a new young quarterback. Even as well as Bo has done, I think you continue to build there. And then you mentioned it, but I mean, we did it with Tony Gonzalez, with Matt Ryan. It was a massively important part. It was funny when we did that trade. I told the agent, I said, do not screw me on this. This guy needs to be here more than 1 year. Tony ended up being there for 5 years, a very, very important productive part and evolution of Matt's work, because he had a high percentage shot underneath like that, and a legitimate guy. I'm just talking about a Y and a half FY guy that is okay. I'm talking about the legitimate ones, and there are some good ones out there. I do love that idea. Where do you go in free agency? I mean, people were asking me today. I mean, talk about T. Higgins. I mean, if you're talking about a receiver, like that's a big ticket item. You can stay in the draft. In my mind, I really believe that. The more I'm around that, the more I realize I would personally spend the money in free agency, if there is the ideal offensive lineman for you. And there are a couple guys out there, of course, I would consider that. I never thought that before, though. It was interesting. For the longest time, I thought I would never do anything for an interior offensive lineman. We did it with Alex Mack. He was one of my biggest, and we had Michael Turner. We had let's see who else I'm trying to think. We had a few free agents, but that was the biggest free agent move beyond. And I know it's funny because I think when you're talking about some of these other guys and you think about a center, you're like, really, is that really going to affect Matt Ryan's his ability to evolve? And it did,
of course.
So
right.
So the interior guy, because nowadays these quarterbacks can deal with this a little bit more on the outside. If you get that crazy pressure up the middle and you don't have stoutness there and smarts there and everything, et cetera, et cetera. I know that, Tony Gonzalez doesn't want me to say that Alex Mack was a better free agent acquisition than him, but he was right. He was right there in a different way for sure. So I do believe that's important.
Well, when you look at a guy like Bo Nix and the tight end position being as important as it is, remember the leading receiver for the tight end position for the Broncos did not even have 300 yards. They didn't even get 600 yards in the position. The leading guy in receptions didn't even have 20. So when you look at Bo Nix's rookie year through that lens and realize sort of what he didn't have, I do wonder if it was actually maybe even more impressive than people that just look at the base stats would indicate.
No, it's a very good point. I mean, I sit there and I look at all those years where Bill was very particular about how he did things in New England, and there weren't always studs there. There were far from that. I mean, Randy Moss came in, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you on that. I think Bo is such a competitor, and I think that combination of them, which I always found fascinating, even the early arguments they had, and I think I might be wrong, but it felt like Sean Payton really liked the fact that this guy was going to get back at him a little bit, right? I think that was good.
He said that specifically. Yeah. He said he appreciated the competitiveness, and that's something that data's hard to quantify.
That's
exactly you've got to be able to have that ability to do all of it.
That's right.
So it's fascinating to see what you and the team at Sumer have built. Obviously, it's turning into it continues to grow and go into the collegiate ranks. You said NIL portal. Talk about something that you spend your whole day on.
We could talk forever about it, and without getting a ton of detail on the NCAA side. I mean, there are a massive amount of interest out there on both sides of the pro and the college of how you're going to, again, back to what we said, not to beat it up, how you're going to apply the data properly. So it's obviously very important in the evolution of it all.
Fascinating stuff. Obviously, go to sumersports.com for more if you're not using it already. Even some of the data that you can use, you'll look at as a fan, is fascinating to maybe change the way you think about the way football is played. So, Thomas Dimitroff, thanks so much. It's always good to talk to you.
Always good. Appreciate it.
And let's get you back in the game.
Maybe we'll be there. Keep in touch.
All right. Thanks
a
so
lot.
much.
Anytime you guys need me. Thank you.
We'll be back. Mile High Sports Today.